So my name is Drix Dumornay, and my story is going to be a story about someone overwhelmingly human. So my story is primarily focusing on my dad because when I was really young, pretty much as a baby, up until about 7, I was a very problematic child. Not as in problematic as in, baby doing baby thing, but as in my medical health was deteriorating and not a very good way. So early on, my dad was studying to be a doctor, and by the time I was born, he was certified. Although that would be in Haiti and Port-au-Prince at the time. So I had 3 major conditions, of which stemmed over time and became such a big problem because I kept having to get surgery multiple times over and over again. The cost was ramping up, and even though we had 2 doctors in the house, it's not enough money to pay for it. And so in the beginning, I had a problem in which I had a cyst in my intestines, which was eating away a lot of the nutrients I would have. So because of that, I was in a state of starvation a lot of the time. And in Haiti, it's not like everyone can eat all the time, but fortunately my parents were able to provide so I could eat a lot. But even then, it wasn't coming to me, it was going to my cyst. So I had to get surgery to get that removed. My dad did the incision, and he's not a specialist on my internal, so a specialist had to do all that. So that was my first surgery, and that would be the first of many surgeries to come. After the cyst got removed, I ended up getting another condition of bowel obstruction, which actually was linked to something else that they discovered. So for my bowel obstruction, they had to clear it out multiple times, and they were confused what was going on. And after they did a few scans, they discovered that I had something more. They discovered I had a hernia as well. And for a short rundown on a hernia, it's a slightly weak obstruction on the flap that is supposed to be holding up your intestines. So what happened is my intestine kept poking through a small spot, and because of that, food would go through, but they would get stuck, which in a sense caused more bowel obstruction. It was difficult to fix it because I just got my cyst removed, so my body was already severely weakened, so healing was a difficult issue. So when they would patch up one hernia, another one would happen. And it was difficult for them to fix it, especially in Haiti since we didn't have the best medical equipment. I had a lot of surgeries. As far as my parents can tell, it went into the double digits. I had roughly about 15 surgeries by the time I was 6 years old. And today I'm alive because a lot of the surgeries, many of them were helped with my dad with what he knew and studied. And my last surgery was actually here in America, in Pennsylvania, actually down in Lancaster General Hospital. That was the last surgery I had because we had proper medical equipment and a lot of the issues I had could be handled and I could get medication. And because of that, essentially my dad was able to earn enough money despite all the medical costs I was costing him and brought me to America. He studied to finish more of his doctoring. He specialized in emergency rooms, and from there he was able to help me come back to life. And to be honest, from what the doctors said in Haiti, they didn't expect me to live very long, especially since I was supposed to still be getting surgery today. But it looks like they were wrong, and my dad brought me here and said that's not going to happen. And on my last surgery, he told my mom that this surgery is going to be the last one. My family is very religious. We are a Christian family, so my dad had a conversation with God, and he went to my mom and said this surgery will 100% be the last one. He had a conversation. He never told me what the conversation was. He just told me he had a conversation. They went in, they patched me up one last time. They thought I would be coming back, and I never came back. And that is why I'm still here today. My dad, the surgeries he performed on me were primarily, didn't have anything to do with the cyst. Those were done by a specialist. What he helped worked on was to deal with my hernias because of the obstruction that kept occurring. So they needed a lot of hands on deck in order to handle this sort of situation, because if they possibly messed up, they could cause my opening to get even bigger, and that would, at worst case scenario, possibly cause all of my intestines to spill out, which would maybe not leave me here standing. So a lot of the surgeries he did had to do with incisions and sort of putting back my intestines where they needed to be and patching up the opening. At the time, what they had in Haiti, they had to use normal surgery to try to keep it together. But the surgery could only last for so long, especially with the amount of pressure and how slow I was healing. Despite how young I was, I wasn't healing very fast. It is when I came here that they decided to go with a bit of a cauterization technique to try to seal it up a bit more with suture. That held it long enough for me to heal, and as I started to eat and recover, my body was healing faster. And eventually I was healing faster than any hernia could possibly show up. And thanks to all the medical equipment and the stand, and they kept me in the hospital for roughly a month. They said I was good to go and I was discharged, and since then I didn't have to go back for any more surgeries. As for who I am, as someone who was, according to doctors, not supposed to live for very long because of my issue, I have a very strong value on human life, and I think it's really important. And that's a big reason of why I'm studying to try to become a doctor, because I also want to save someone else's life as well. I had mine saved by a doctor, fortunately with even my father as well. My mom was also a doctor, but not a doctor in that sort of specialization. She was able to aid, but not to do as much as my dad could. But it's because of them I was able to survive and recover from my injuries, and because of that I really respect people. So I understand that people might have underlying things you don't know about. I wear a shirt all the time. You don't know how many scars I have underneath there. I have 3 scars on my body, but no one really ever knows. So to be honest, I've learned that you should be respectful to people and understand that some people have medical conditions and problems, and in a world where things are so connected together now, I find that people can have problems and you never know about it because many of them are underlying and they're not superficial, so you can't see them. So you have to always be careful with what you're saying and what you're doing and respect people's choices. As far as challenges, it was very challenging for my family, as in Haiti everyone speaks French or Creole, and English is one of the things they do try to learn. So my mom, my dad, and my brother at the time, who would have been about 9, had to all learn English so that they could come here. And English, fortunately for me, is my first language because I had a hard time speaking since I spent a lot of time sick and couldn't be in school. So they had to learn English, and that was a big culture problem for them. And further than that, when they did get here, they kind of had to learn the customs and how things work, because being a doctor in Haiti is not the same thing as being a doctor in America. So they had to relearn a couple of things, understand the equipment, the technology difference. And for my mom especially, she had a very hard time learning English and getting with the people. So it took her a few years to really get acclimated to the environment she was. My dad got in here, he tuned to the systems very quickly and was able to start working, and he got me the help that I needed, what equipment I needed, all the medication. My brother at the time, he needed to learn English. Fortunately for him, my parents said he was special in that sector, so he learned English faster than both of them actually and started to teach them English. But it was after that he had to kind of change schools, and that really messed him up a little bit. So it took until about high school for him to really settle down and get used to how America was. I would like to thank everyone for listening to my story, or my topic of someone who was overwhelmingly human, and I thank my family for doing everything they could to keep me here today.